Momentum and emotion. Texas football will have both on Saturday. Fitting the Horns had their best team win of the season last week. Almost as if Coach Royal wanted to make sure Texas was all right before leaving the 40 acres for the green pastures of his new home. Darrell K. Royal, Texas Memorial Stadium, the place that DKR called his football home on fall Saturdays for 20 years. It will dip to silence on Saturday before erupting into the frenzy of his favorite game. On Friday, some of the game tributes started with the initials DKR placed on the side of the Texas football helmets. Fitting, considering that back in 1961, Coach Royal was responsible for putting the horns on the side of the Texas helmet, and they have been there ever since. To see Earl Campbell struggle to walk is to understand what it meant to play football for Coach Royal. A lot of his former players will tell you that you were not his friend until you were done with your playing days. But while you were at the University of Texas playing for Coach Royal, you knew who was in charge, and you would do anything for the man to get him a win, and a win for the University of Texas, including putting your body in harm's way. Earl Campbell did that, earning his coach's trust, and in the process, developing a father figure.
It wasn't a big secret that Coach Royal and myself was like father, son, you know. I mean, we was very close, and I've heard him say over the years that every game Earl Campbell played in, I won. But what a great man, and he did so much, not only for Earl Campbell, but he did a lot of great things for our state, our university, and so many parents, children. He taught me how to be a man, and I never will forget that, Coach Royal.
Wherever you look from here on out, you will remember Darrell K. Royal, because you look at everything that it means to be part of this Texas Longhorn program, and DKR has his handprints all over it, from the burnt orange to the Longhorn logo that he commissioned to the fact that he put it on the side of the helmet. That is all Coach Royal. With that, welcome to the set here of Texas Game Day. Lowell Galindo here with my good buddies, Ahmad Brooks and Chris Ricks. Guys, when you talk about Coach Royal, he was a guy, when he spoke, he always had that quick wit, those one-liners that as a broadcaster, you wish you had half of the clever things that this man had to say as a head coach. So in honor to that, we're going to use some of those one-liners to set up these conversations to help preview this matchup coming up Saturday morning here at DKR between your Texas Longhorns and the Iowa State Cyclones. Let's start off with this dandy that Coach Royal had to say after taking on the Baylor Bears. Speaking of one player out there, that guy is a big old cuss. Look at him rumbling down the field. Looks like a grizzly bear hauling a walnut. Not sure if Iowa State has some of those man-childs that can do that, holding that football, but they do have weapons. Who will be a threat in your mind for Texas in this game?
Well, I think one of the ones that people are familiar with is the linebacker that just recently went out with injury, Jake Knott. But let me explain something to you, ladies and gentlemen. The co-defensive player of the year in 2011 is his comrade, A.J. Klein. This kid can flat-out ball. He's explosive, he's got a nose for the football, and he's all over the place. In 36 starts, he's produced 317 tackles.
That's pretty
good. Now, if Texas is to run the football, you better watch out for this young man right here. And he also has a guy making his sixth start, will be Jeremiah George, the middle linebacker who had 17 tackles last week versus OU. This may be the best linebacking core in the Big 12, in my opinion, so Texas has its hands full in trying to rush the football.
Guys, for me, it's Chantrell Johnson, running back for Iowa State. He's the one that starts this Cyclone run game. Very dependable, dynamic back. Maybe doesn't have all the huge numbers that you want in a running back, but like I said, he is dependable. Don't forget about James White. These are the guys that lead the Cyclone run game. 99 yards last week versus Oklahoma. That's more than the 74 Texas was able to muster against the Sooners. And don't forget about Steele Jantz, the quarterback. He's a dual threat. He can run the football as well. We know that Texas has improved on defense, but we've also seen the tendencies of that Longhorn rush defense. Showed some glimpses last week versus Texas Tech. They need to come back, have a strong showing again against a Cyclone run game.
Yeah, and what Steele Jantz do they see? The one that had over 300 yards passing with 5 touchdowns, or the young man that also had in the game this season 4 total turnovers. Get this, though. The Iowa State, we know what they did last time here in Austin, Texas. They got the win against the Texas Longhorns. So far in Big 12 play, the road team has above 500 record, meaning they are winning more of the games than the home team so far this season in the Big 12. Let's talk a little bit about the Texas defense coming off this gem from Coach Royal when he said, quote, winning coaches must treat mistakes like copperheads in the bedclothes. Avoid them with all the energy that you can muster. There have been some mistakes for the Texas defense, but it looks like they got that corrected starting with the second half against Kansas and then really a good, solid game from start to finish against Texas Tech. Chris, what is the next step for the Texas defense?
Guys, as we know in life, follow-up is huge. In business, it can make or break a deal. That's what I want to see from this defense. Follow up that performance that they had last week from Texas Tech. They did some things against West Virginia, as we saw, came back versus Oklahoma, not so much. Now you've had a strong showing against Texas Tech. Can you follow up, show that physicality, show the aggression, and show really some of the domination that they showed last week against one of the best offenses in the country? So the question is, what defense will show up versus Iowa State, the one we saw for most of the season or the ones we've seen lately, especially last week, versus the Red Raiders? Take that next step, go to the next level, and show that this is still Texas Longhorn defensive football.
Man, playing defense is about preventing teams from scoring points. That simple. We saw this Texas team prevent Texas Tech from really running roughshod there in Lubbock, only giving up 22 points. Now, how did they do that? They prevented big plays. In addition to that, I thought this was a team that was very sound in getting off of the field on critical downs. We've seen at times 15 of 20 on fourth down for Texas defense. 75%, man. You have to play better on those critical downs. And now, if you're a Texas defense, when it comes to preventing big plays, shore up that run in the middle. Don't let them pop a big one on you. And if you're that back line, tackle well. We're seeing some young guys in the linebacking core as well as in the secondary, I believe, really develop into some good tacklers that this team can depend on in the middle of the field. But that's where it starts for me on this Texas defense and taking the next step.
Steve Edmond looks like a completely different player than he did at the beginning of the season, probably coming off his best game right now as a Texas Longhorn. But you talk about the Texas defense, if they do have some of those issues with missed tackles, that's saying a lot, because making people miss, that's been the issue for the Iowa State offense this season. Paul Rhodes, even earlier this week, saying that's what we have to do. We cannot make people miss. We have to do that if we want to beat the Texas Longhorns. Guys, ready for another quote? You guys have heard this one before. This one, Coach Royal said, and he was entirely joking around, but it took on a life of its own. 3 things can happen when you pass, and 2 of them are bad. I love the quote he said after that, though. He said it labeled him so conservative that he had to look 2 ways before crossing a one-way street. So we're talking about the Texas offense. David Ash threw the long ball. He didn't have those bad things happen to him when he threw the football. What do we expect now? The Texas goes up against another very good defense. This is Paul Rhodes, a guy that was a defensive coordinator for Tommy Tuberville, the Texas Tech head coach.
For me, it starts with allowing your talented players to touch the football. That's the only way that you can find out if these playmakers have the hot hand. I've been saying that for weeks. They did it in the second half of Kansas. Very successful. They did it versus Texas Tech early on in the first 2 drives. Both led to points. I believe it starts there. Force ISU to defend your best athletes. And aside from that, stay steady in the red zone. This is a team that ranks 2nd nationally in the red zone. If they can get to the red zone, getting touchdowns is something that's very important. And this was a team in 2011 that desperately struggled to find a playmaker in the red zone and to score those points. This year, they've righted that ship and are very strong.
Shipley, 4 catches in the red zone, all touchdowns in the red zone for Jackson Shipley.
For me, guys, it starts with protecting the football. That's something they did not do in 2010. The last time the Cyclones rolled up in here, Garrett Gilbert had some turnovers. They just were not sharp offensively. So you got to protect the football. Number 2, I think you throw the ball. David Ash, arguably his best game last week against Texas Tech. I know he had some more yards and another touchdown against Ole Miss, but that was the Ole Miss defense. That was a better defense in Texas Tech. I think you throw the ball early with David Ash. This is an Iowa State defense last week that gave up a season-high 405 yards with Landry Jones. He threw the ball all over the field. I think David Ash can do that, especially at home. He's thrown the ball very well here. Let him throw the ball, get it out early. It's 11 a.m. start. Get Ash going, get him woken up, and then mix in that run game. I think that's huge for this Texas offense as far as a game plan from Brian Harsin and Major Applewhite.
And don't forget about the running back, Malcolm Brown. The Texas staff saying that he will be critical for this final 3-game stretch of the regular season. It looks like he's getting closer to 100%. Should get some carries in this game coming up. Maybe from the wishbone. Texas will line up in the wishbone for the first time since 1976 to honor The life and legacy of Coach Royal. Texas Game Day, poured by Dr. Pepper, starts at 8:45 a.m. Central Time with Ricky Williams on set for the duration and including a special appearance by one Colt McCoy. Coming up next on Longhorn Extra, the Hall of Honor has two good ones joining the mix. Phil Dawson and Major Applewhite getting the highest honor Texas players can get.